mom's canceled her appointments with her dog, with, up to Debbie, for him to be groomed and stuff.
Well, she's not allowed to open.
No, so.
She didn't have to cancel because it's an
Not
automatic
open.
cancel.
No, well, the first one, mom had to cancel, so.
No, I told Max he's gonna look like a woolly bully by the time Aunt Debbie can get a hold of him, like his mom. Oh, they did call me today and set up an appointment for May 7th.
For, really?
They're hoping they can be open.
Let's hope.
Well, yours turned out pretty
It
good.
did, didn't it? It did. I was real happy. It's not styled or nothing. The wind blew it, but yeah, I was happy. Oh, Bonnie, they were out there like.
Did you make it in, Bachman?
Went away.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm in then, right?
Yep, you're in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, Jeff, you're not on. Your picture's not on there.
It's not?
No,
It says live on YouTube. Did I do something wrong or is this right?
it just says iPhone Jeff.
No, my phone says live on YouTube. Is it supposed to?
Oh, you'll have to ask Daddy.
I don't know about all that. Eddie? So that is one way to watch it. It is live now, and the link is being put on our website.
All right.
Is that
As long as you can hear me, I'm good.
Yep.
Okay.
Fair enough. Okay, so the link is posted officially on the website now.
If you want some water, that's
An extra.
mm-hmm. Nobody. Wow.
Wine.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
empty.
Mm-hmm.
And had pretty much everything.
Everything good. I took mom yesterday, and I made her wear a mask and everything, and because she was out of stuff, and because it's been a couple weeks since she'd been to the store, so I was glad to get her out because Sunday she was.
It's kind of funny, you feel no pressure to make conversation when everybody's in the video chat. Like we're all here, but Bonnie and Debbie are going to make conversation because they're actually physically there. It'd be weird. You just sit there and get on your phone. But if we're on the video chat, fine, right?
On a video chat, what I'm doing is not rude, but in person, it really is.
Where's the mute button?
I wonder what kind of a crowd we'll get tonight.
Oh, no, but do you have your Bermuda shorts on, Alan?
I do not, but I don't have shoes on.
Oh, no. That's what I smelled. Your feet.
There's the television. We're way too close to 6:30. I'd show you my feet, but I won't. Craig's just down there going, "Oh my God, these people are in charge."
John, where'd you go?
What's in the cup, Alan's what I want to know.
Just a little bourbon, a lot of coffee, and a lot of bourbon, a little coffee.
Okay.
There we go.
Just about like normal.
Why change anything, right?
Exactly. So Eddie, down at the bottom, it says chat 2. What does that mean? Uh-oh, I can't hear you.
Is it the general chat?
Does it show the group? Are you
Yes.
chat?
Yeah.
General chat. No, I don't know what rank he is.
That's hilarious, Alan.
You'll get that joke on the way home. Or maybe it just wasn't funny.
You always assume nobody got them. That's your default.
I just have I have a very optimistic outlook on my
That's
jokes.
true. That's true.
And then on the bottom, it says manage participants, and that says 16. What does that mean?
That's the number of total participants.
Okay. Do we have people online waiting to talk, waiting to listen in, huh?
Yeah, it looks like we have about seven people that are not staff or trustees.
Oh, cool.
So if you click on your participant panel, it'll show a listing of everyone that's in the meeting.
So, and manage participants, if I click on that, it'll tell us everybody that's there.
Yep, exactly.
And then where your chat icon is, that's people can, like if you send a message, that's like an instant messenger for the Zoom program.
Ed McCoy.
Alan, this is Karen Ribora. You will also have the ability to mute us all during your meeting.
Oh, I would never do that.
No. That way someone interrupts you.
Oh, no, that won't happen.
Okay, Ed has some kind of fancy stuff going on with flames behind him.
I don't see that. I wish I could see that.
He wants to comment, but he can't yet.
Can you hear me? We don't see them.
There he is.
Oh, look at that. Hey,
Hi,
first Zoom
Ed.
meeting. First Zoom meeting, I gotta do something good, right?
That is cool. It's kind of Game of Thrones meets Harley Davidson. It's really kind of cool.
Gotta make a good entrance.
When it says you're muted by host, the host can mute you.
Okay.
So don't do it.
How come they see him and we don't? Eddie, look forward.
Mhm.
There he is. Ed, your head's on fire.
Looks like it's coming out of his ears. Are you in a dungeon?
That's where I live.
It looks like you're getting ready for a post interview with the Reds.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm thinking there, John.
Eddie, I have a quick practical question for you, and that is in terms of participants, will you be able to capture this list, or do we have to record it some other way?
It should be captured, but since this is the first go around, I can do it, the old fashioned way and make sure I get a photo of it, sort of deal.
All right, Eddie, do you have control over all the participants here? We're going to mute everybody except trustees, basically, probably.
Yep.
All right.
All right. All right, I will begin the recording. Okay, so it's recording.
All right, it's 6:30. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. Debbie, can you do roll call?
Yeah, Mr. Freeman,
Here.
Mr. Kelly,
Here.
Ms. Batchelor.
Here.
All right. And then we'll go ahead and do the pledge. If you skip to slide 2, Eddie, we have the American flag if you don't have one.
Ah, cool.
Yeah, and we'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. And since you guys are on site, Bonnie and Debbie, do you want to lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance. Oh, we're standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right.
That's me.
So, meeting called to order to go over some ground rules here. This is obviously the first virtual meeting that Pierce Township has ever done. You know, we had our options here as far as just streaming. I think it was fine per the statute, per the law, to go ahead and just stream this out, but we went the extra mile and we've done the Zoom conference to allow for public participation so we can get feedback and input from the public. So a lot of work went into this on Eddie's part and Loretta's part and all the staff's part to make this happen. So I appreciate all the work that you guys did on this. And, you know, hopefully it turns out okay. That being said, we're going to have certain periods of time where we're going to talk about the items at hand amongst ourselves. As I say amongst ourselves, it'll be amongst the trustees and staff. And then we will have periods of time for public input. But a little contrary to how our typical meetings go, it's not, you can raise your hand virtually, but at certain periods we'll call on people and we'll allow for input. And so we'll go ahead and do that and we'll unmute you. If you want to talk, you can go to the, let's see, where do you go to raise your hand again, Eddie?
It's on the participant panel. So if you click on participants on your panel, it'll give you the option to raise hand.
Okay, so anybody who wants to speak, you can go ahead and do that. We'll see that your hand is raised and we're calling you. It might not be immediately. We're going to have certain blocks of time that we, you know, call on people for public participation, but you can go ahead and raise your hand if you have a comment or an input. But the priority here is going to be to get through the business and have the trustees and staff discuss things. And then when we're finished, we'll allow for public participation. All right, Eddie, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, the only thing is if anyone runs into an issue trying to raise their hand or something to that effect, the fallback is they can use the chat if they'd like and send a message over the chat. So we'll be watching that as well.
All right, and then you also have in the very top of the chat, if anybody scrolls to the very top of the chat, you should see a link to kind of our meeting guide on our website, as well as the phone number to call for our tech support. If you want to call and you're having problems, you can call in there and somebody will try to help you out. So I just ask that everybody be respectful, you know, and let's stick to the business at hand here the best as possible. All right. So we'll start out with old business.
We still have to.
I'm sorry, approval of minutes.
I request a motion to approve the special meeting minutes of March 16th and March 19th.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Debbie?
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mrs. Batchelor,
Yes.
and Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Old business, Village of Amelia update, summary of the April 6th meeting attached. I guess I'll go ahead and let Tom comment on whatever he wants to comment here.
Okay. Just a few highlights. The meeting lasted for a couple of hours, and there were many subjects discussed. I think some of the more important ones are that the state auditor claims that they are merely facilitators, and that's because there's a statute that says that, but they do have to audit the village and they have to audit both townships. So they are much more than a mere facilitator. They are actually now moved into the active role of giving us very pointed legal advice and giving some pretty strong opinions about what we should do or what we should not do. One of the things the auditor concludes is that the Village Council of Amelia is the entity that has to terminate the income tax. They are saying that based on previous dissolutions of villages that they've dealt with. And they also read the critical state statute to say that the village continues even after the certification of the election results, which was in late November. So the village still continues. And so they feel that the village has to continue to actually terminate the income tax and do several other things, including pay off the debts. The other question that was critical is, who is the Village of Amelia? And they have concluded that it's the old council members, not the new ones. And their reasoning there is that there's a statute called the holdover statute. And if anyone is doing research, it's 3.01 in the revised code. And again, the auditor says that they have used that several times in other dissolutions, and it's been used many times in the state of Ohio for officials whose terms end, but their replacement is not allowed or able to take their place. So that's the opinions, two critical opinions of the state auditor. They also have concluded that there are several options available for the village to pay off the debts of the village, and the auditor is still working on various alternatives. And they've asked for input from the bond counsel, Brenda Weimer, for the two townships to help with evaluating those options. They want to do what's best and quickest. They, at the time of our meeting, they had not reached a conclusion about whether the two townships were allowed to sell off the real estate that came to us and use the proceeds to pay off the village debt. Since the meeting late last week, they reached the conclusion that no, we cannot sell them off. We're not allowed to. And they gave some reasoning for that, and it's open to debate whether they're correct or not, but that's what they've said, is that the two townships cannot sell the property that they received from the village and use the proceeds to pay off the village debt. The other village property is to be split up approximately 65-35. And then there's ongoing issues with a possible new TIF that the tax increment financing that Pierce may want to issue for the premier development. And that's being explored right now between bond counsel and the auditor, as well as the Ohio Attorney General. There are a lot of questions about how a township like Pierce can establish a TIF during the time that the dissolution process is taking place. And it's not known whether we can do that or not. So they're probably going to seek an Attorney General opinion. So I would say those are the main points of what the state auditor has told us. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Tom. To start out, I'll go ahead and open this up to, Alan, Bonnie, Debbie, you guys have opinions or comments on this?
Well, essentially what we just heard, if I can recap, we just heard the same thing that we've heard since November, right? We're no farther along really than we were back in November the 25th. Is that correct?
I think that the way I would describe it is on November the 25th, we were told that the only people to represent the village are the law director, the former fiscal officer, and the former mayor. Now we're being told something that I consider to be completely the opposite, that the village council actually has to be seated, and so they have to act, and that they are the active participants. So I think it's quite different from what they've told us. We've originally followed their advice all along in creating these agreements that we created. So now I think they're backtracking quite a bit.
So essentially we're worse off than we were on the 25th of November.
It's like everything that we've done for the last 5 months just went out the window.
That's one way to look at it. Yeah,
I think that's the only way we can look at it. I think
Yeah.
we've spent a lot of money in council and
Time.
and, you know, we've worked hard to try and get things resolved for the residents of the old village of Amelia. And I just feel like we've all just wasted all this time, 5 months, and we're back to ground zero again.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing we've done is we've, in all cases, we've tried to do two things. We tried to follow the law, and we had well over 120 years experience of people who were anticipating or reading that statute. But we also tried to do what was fair and what was right. So we tried to do things right, and we tried to do things legally. And now we're somewhat getting second guessed by the legal people at the state auditor's office. Yes.
But Tom, we also followed the advice of Dave Thompson and the rest. And obviously it wasn't good advice from what
Yes.
we're being told now.
I agree.
I agree with that as well. I mean, it would be a little different if they didn't have a representative from the state auditor's office sitting in on all of our meetings all the way back to the very beginning. For months,
Right.
we had meetings. For months, we made what we thought was progress, and only to be met at this point with a complete, reversal or change of direction. It's like an entirely different path. It's not even.
And I mean, Nick, look at it. We're not experts. We've never been through this before. They should have known better and given us better advice than what we've been given.
Right.
It makes the townships look bad in the eyes of the people of Amelia. Like, okay, they don't know what they're doing, but we've only been doing what we've been told to do.
Yeah. Right.
So basically in their recommendation, Tom, they're saying that that only the existing council can make the decisions moving forward, right? The council that existed on November the 5th.
Yes.
Last year, they're the only ones that can make a decision. So they would have to come together, actually vote and resolve all this, correct?
Yes, correct.
And
So
Alan, the question I asked when that statement was made, so if the old council did not want the village to dissolve, what is going to make them want to work together and try and resolve anything and move this forward and get it settled? I mean, if they were opposed to it to begin with.
Right. That question was asked in a phone conference last week, and the answer from the Ohio auditor is they don't know.
That was the answer when I asked.
Well, what if they choose not to want to be seated? What if they say, we've already done this, we're not interested, we're not showing up?
Well, the law director of Amelia is researching the question in their charter, because they are a charter village, how many members of council would be necessary to have a quorum to have a meeting. That's being explored. In some communities, you can have a quorum with anybody showing up, but most communities require more than half, but they're checking that.
Well, what if they say they're not interested? They're done, we don't want any more, we're out. Or they don't even live in the town anymore.
Right.
I mean, they've really left us in a lurch because you're right. I mean, there are about 10 things that could happen here, and 9 of them are bad.
Right. Yes. They offer no guidance along those lines yet. What they're saying is go to that bridge and try to cross it. And if you can't cross it, come back to us and we'll try to help you.
So who can call a meeting of their council? Do we know the answer to that?
I think that the officials that have been dealing with the auditor can, the law director, the former mayor, and the fiscal officer, because they're the ones who have been wielding the power thus far. So I think they can do it.
You think, Tom, but we've thought before. We thought back in December, we thought things back in January. None of those things were evidently good enough to pass through the audit at the end. I mean, this isn't directed at you by any means, but what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do we need more specific guidance other than just some vague, pointer in the direction in which they think we should go?
They didn't answer that. And when you were talking, Nick, it was hard for me to hear it. It was coming in and out. But No, they haven't answered all of the practical questions. They're saying the village continues because the statute has those words, and they're concluding that the village council has to be the ones that run the village, not the 3-person team that the state auditor, Dave Thompson, told us. It's different.
But back to Alan's question, I mean, who is going to reseat that old village council? That's a very specific question, and I think needs a specific answer, not something
Right.
that, some vague pointer. Is kind of the direction you guys need to head. Well, that's something that we really need to know. And evidently, you guys are calling shots to an extent, because we can't pass the audit at the end if you guys don't say, okay.
Right. Well, now that we've seen these answers from the state attorney general, now we'll have to ask them more specific questions. Definitely. Especially the one about not being able to sell the property. That's a troubling one.
All right. Any other comment on our end? I might go ahead and open it to the public, because I'm sure somebody's chomping at the bit here.
I'm sure of it.
Nick, I'll just add this. It seemed like any hard, important question that we asked, the answer we got back was, we'll take that under advisement.
Yeah, every time.
Sure.
Yes.
And we really had to push to get some more specific answers.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
There still are a few of the questions that are unanswered, but many of them have been answered now.
Okay. Let's go ahead and open this up to public participation on this particular topic. And then I also like to ask that let's try to stick to 2 minutes on our comments, just so we can keep kind of a handle on what's going on. We're not going to put a timer on you, but let's try to get our points across, and let's try not to repeat points and things like that. Same kind of ground rules we've had when we have bigger meetings. So we'll go ahead and jump to some people who have their hands raised. The first one I saw go up was Renee. So I will go ahead and unmute Renee. Now, Renee, you are unmuted. You can go ahead and
there hasn't been very many people that could mute me. You guys are
I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you.
Well, take it as you will, Nick. You know what I'm saying? So my question, I guess, to Tom is, and I read the whole reply from the auditor's office. Are they saying that the council has to be seated to get rid of the tax, or to also divvy up your property and okay the sale of property? Can you be a little more clear on that? I know that.
Well, yes. Okay, so I'll answer now. They weren't very clear on the property part. They were clear on the tax part. They say that the old village council has to be seated, has to have an ordinance prepared, and they have to vote on it. And then in that ordinance, they would pick the date that the tax ends. So that's what they said. As far as sale of property, what they're saying is the property came to us 60 days after the dissolution was filed. And so that property is now in our names jointly with Batavia. And if we sell it, we're not allowed to pay off the debt. That's what they've said. So that's a real surprise to everybody who's been working on this all this time.
And Tom, this is Bonnie, can I add, they also said that the old village council were the only ones that could do away with the earnings tax.
Yes, that's what they said. I can understand what that statute says. I've read the statute and I see lots of cases under that statute. I'm not 100% sure I agree with it, but they're the ones that are carrying the big stick here, and they're the ones that have to approve everything at the end of the line in terms of auditing. But that's what they're saying. The old council are called holdovers, and those holdovers stay in office.
Now, to be sure, back up to the property real quick. So they're saying after 60 days, the property gets dispersed in a certain way. But prior to 60 days, we had come up with an agreement that evidently is null and void now, or where do we stand with the agreement exactly?
They're saying that the agreements that we negotiated and took us 59 days to do it, that those are essentially evaporated. I think they're valid agreements between the two townships, but that the validity of those and the effectivity of those is unclear. But what they didn't say is this: what if we had had the village sign that agreement and the property still came to us? I think their new opinion that came out last week is we still could not sell the properties and pay off the debt. Somehow they think the statute says that the village itself, within that 60 days, could have and maybe should have sold the property, which does not make much sense to anybody.
Seems unfair to sell that amount of property and value it and everything else within 60
So
days.
totally. Yes. It doesn't make sense.
So on that, when they say, because Tom, I remember like in the very first meetings that you had said, and we had requested all of the resignations, that council had resigned because the election was the first week in November. They didn't have a meeting in November, which they could have. They could have had a meeting in December. They didn't have. So they've already broke their charter before the village was even dissolved. The second thing on that is this tax, and I don't know why none of the lawyers have done this, that tax can be, I don't know what the legal term is, repealed, because they didn't follow through on the ORC of setting up the tax review board.
Yeah.
So in just by their own ordinance says in there that it must be done. They violated that ordinance by not doing what the state set forth to do on an earnings tax.
Yeah. Well, let me comment on what you just said. It's not my place to give an opinion on how they carried out their tax ordinance or not, but the village law director feels that she has studied the ordinance itself, and she feels that a tax appeals board can be established anytime by the council or by the mayor, because it doesn't have any effect. There is no purpose for the board until there's an appeal of an assessment, and there's been no assessment ever issued by the Regional Income Tax Authority. So until there's an assessment, there's no need for a board. And she also feels that the way their statute or the way their ordinance is written, that if only one person is on the board, that person can act as a one-person hearing board to hear these any appeals that are filed. So that's what they feel, and whether it's valid or not, I don't know.
That is not valid. That is not how the ORC reads.
Yeah.
And there have been assessments. I know of one that's been done in the past 2 weeks that they've asked for assessment to go in front of the review board, because the time we're in now with this COVID thing, people have lost their jobs. I lost my job.
Yeah.
So now people need to ask for those assessments and then send Kathleen Ryan, which is what I've told the village to do, and then ask her to be in the review board. The ORC reads that there has to be 3 people on that tax review board, not 1, 3.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, there's no question about that. What she's reading is the ordinance, not the statute. And the ordinance seems to say that if there's absences of any or all of the board members in a hearing, that if there's only 1 present, they can go ahead with a hearing. That's what she's looking at, and she found that. And
But they never did do it. That's the thing. They never did it until we pointed it out that they didn't do it. Then they put something online, and then the village dissolved.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it
And
was never even put out to get participants for that.
yeah. And as to your other point about the village resigning, that's what Bill Gilpin confirmed the other day at our meeting, that he said on November the 25th, he had all of the village members sign something that said they resigned and they stopped getting paid at the end of November. So none of them were in office in December. So the Pierce Township trustees might ask very logically, why didn't the state tell Amelia to keep those people in office so they could carry out their duties to end the income tax and to settle disputes and to handle the property? They didn't. They told us there was no village council. So that's why it's a total flip-flop.
Right.
We just have to deal with it. We have to try to do what's right. Yeah.
But Tom, that gets back to, I then have to ask the question, if they all resigned at the end of November, then who's held over? They chose to leave. So there's no one there that is being held over.
I know. That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean,
Yeah. Who's holding
so at the
up?
end of the day, it would seem to me that we would only have to fall back. If you want a holdover, you have to go back to the last election and probably seat the people who won,
Right.
because they're the only people of record that could possibly be held over. Everyone else quit,
Well,
except for the mayor, of course.
Yeah.
everything we're getting is legal opinions from the state auditor's office, correct?
I'm sorry.
These are legal opinions from the state auditor's office.
They're legal guidance and their answers to our questions. We're asking them specific questions and now they're finally giving us answers. So this would now cause additional questions to go back to them, such as the question that was just raised. How can people who resigned officially be considered holdovers if they actually resigned? And I'm sure the auditor will want the documentation of whatever the people signed or whatever happened back in November to document whether that's the case.
And
I'm
Tom,
sure
there
they'll want
were several attorneys on the line with us at that meeting. It wasn't just one giving answers.
Yeah, right. Well, I think, yeah, right.
But unfortunately, this is a lot like the Hydra, right? Every time we answer one question, it only adds another 8 more on top of it.
Yes.
So I don't feel like we're getting anywhere near the end. I almost feel like we need to just stop going to these meetings until the state can get their crap together. Tell us what they want so then we can move forward. Until then, we're not going to waste any more time on our lawyers and our staff and anyone else. We've spent approaching hundreds of thousands of dollars on this quixotic effort, and we're not getting anywhere. So when they're ready to tell us what they want, maybe they can call us.
I don't disagree with that. Alan, you're set to go to the next meeting.
Oh, wait a second. I take that back. I get to go to the next meeting.
You can tell
Maybe we'll do it after the next meeting.
at the meeting, Alan.
Well, there's got to be some kind of end. As
I take that all back.
Just keep engaging in this back and forth that leads us absolutely nowhere. We're worse off than we were when we started these negotiations, if you want to call it that. I mean, we're worse off. So I don't know. I don't have a lot of answers. We just continue doing the same thing, expect a different result, right? We're getting nowhere.
Well, I think
Is there a way for us to say?
Yeah, we're like a ball in a game. We're just being bounced around, but eventually we're getting down to a certain point, and that's where the income tax will stop and the wishes of the state auditor will be followed. But they're having a very difficult time making it clear to us what they want because they haven't made it clear. They've made it very unclear.
All right.
Wow, somebody's got mixed drinks tonight.
No kidding.
Sounds like it.
Have at it. I don't know. All right. Thanks, Renee. Do you have anything else?
Nope, that's it for right now.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
He reserves the right to come back.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, Renee. All right, Ed, I'm going to go ahead and call on you. You're unmuted. What do you got?
Comes to waiting on the state, I think that's going to be a bad mistake because we're not getting anything out of them now. I think the squeaky wheel gets the grease type thing. So I think we need to keep hammering the state. But Tom, my question to you is, do you agree with their interpretation of the law, the state's interpretation of the law? Do you think that's challengeable on their interpretation of the law? Because it seems bizarre to me.
Well, let me answer it 2 ways. Number one, no, I don't agree with it because I participated in writing the agreements where we tried to follow the law. And I've got a lot of experience, and so does Dave Fry, and so does Brenda Weimer. So we spent many, many, many hours writing those agreements. I think what we did was the right thing. I do not agree with their conclusions, but they're the state auditor. So we always have the choice of filing a lawsuit to have the court interpret this. But the fear that everybody has every time we talk, the lawyers talk, is that if we file a lawsuit, it'll take longer and longer and longer because of the COVID problem and the fact that we would be on one side of the table and the state official would be on the other side of the table. Doesn't mean we would have an uphill battle, but we've always had that option. So no, I don't agree, but I understand where they're coming from. I can see the words that they're hanging on, and I can understand their logic, but I don't think it's following the statute.
Okay, good enough.
I
Thank you.
guess, so I guess, Ed, so I can understand it. What you're saying, Tom, is that if we filed a case, it could take us how long to get in front of a judge to begin with, which means that the tax would remain on for all that time
It could take
while
a
we wait
year.
to get into court.
Yeah. It could take a year
A year.
for a
So
declaratory
the
judgment.
tax,
Yes.
so in order to get the questions answered, the tax would remain on during that entire legal process.
Probably, but no one knows the answer to that. That's a great question. No one knows.
All right, let's see, we got any other raised hands? No other raised hands? Ed, is that all? You got anything else, man?
No, it just seems bizarre to me, and it seems like I don't know if they were threatened with lawsuit, would it force their hand to come up with more logical conclusions than what they have?
Doubt it.
Good.
I doubt it.
I think Alan's point's well taken. I think at that point, you're just dealing with attorneys. And I mean, you got to go there, but it's probably going to drag things out, I would think.
Right.
And the cost.
I think the way that most people who are, at least the lawyers involved, feel like at least now they're giving us answers, whereas for the last 5 months they didn't. And if we don't agree with their answers, we always have the choice of filing a suit. But now that we have answers, we can at least participate or assist the village in trying to carry out these things that the state auditor is now telling us.
So you think this was part of their master plan, Tom? Just kind of anchor us in the realm of no answers, and then when we actually get answers, we see it as a gain, as a win. Now we're getting answers, and that's a good thing.
You can say the glass is half full or half empty. I don't know which. Yeah.
They're garbage answers, but hey, at least we're getting them.
We're getting answers. Well, yeah.
I don't know about that. I don't know.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
What else? Anybody
I'm
else?
good, Nick.
All right. Okay, I guess we'll move on with the agenda here. And Bonnie or Alan, you guys got anything to add?
No, Nick.
No.
Okay. All right, so we will move on to new business. Debbie?
Okay. I request a motion for approval of the payment of payroll for the month of March in the amount of $347,412.98.
So moved.
Seconded.
Thank you. Mrs. Batchelor,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
and Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
I request a motion for approval of the payment of the bills for the month of March in the amount of $247,634.79.
Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Ms. Batchelor,
Yes.
and Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
I request a motion to create the Jenny Lynn Road Improvement Fund. This is for the OPWC project.
Do I have a motion?
So moved. I'll second that one.
Okay.
Roll call.
Mrs. Batchelor,
Yes.
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
yes, and Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
And my last one, believe it or not, I request a motion.
That we'll see.
I request a motion to authorize a 2-year renewal agreement with Dental Care Plus for dental insurance coverage with the one-time increase of 3%.
So moved.
All right. I actually have a comment on this. So.
Oh, sorry.
It seems it should be simple, but recently, and you know, they have chosen not to work with my dentist anymore. So I'm paying everything out of pocket. Now I'm willing to, you know, I just want to get people's feedback. If we want to keep doing that, but I'm not going to switch dentists. I believe Craig goes to the same dentist I do. And I'm willing to take it on the chin, no pun intended. But I don't know. Has anybody else experienced this? Is this program not working with your dentist anymore?
No,
Not me.
not me.
Nope.
Just you and Craig.
It's just us, Craig? You gotta unmute Craig. Craig.
Yeah, I've not heard anything from any of our employees. I think it might just be anybody that goes to our practice. I know we've got a couple other employees in the fire department that go there, but nobody said anything.
So what's your plan? Just pay it out of pocket and stick with a dentist?
Yeah, because I don't want to change either.
Fair enough.
Just two of you. Mr. Freeman. Roll call.
Do we have a first and a second? I just thought we had a move. I thought I moved prematurely.
And Bonnie second. Then we open for discussion.
Okay, cool. All right. Yes.
Right, okay. Mrs. Batchelor
Yes.
and Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
That's it.
All righty. Let's see. John Kohler, you're up.
I request a motion to authorizing a contract with the lowest bidder, J.K. Muir, in the amount of $202,280 for the Jenny Lind Road Improvement Project.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Ms. Batchelor.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
I request a motion accepting the proposals from Hauk Asphalt Maintenance for the repair and resurface the Pierce Park basketball court and tennis courts in the amount of $18,125 and $13,593.75 of this will be reimbursed through the Claremont County Park District Community Parks Improvement Program grant.
That sounds pretty good. I need to get into resurfacing basketball courts though, I think.
I like how the parks are going to reimburse 75 cents. $13,593.75.
It's very specific.
When you're doing a grant, why don't you just round up or down? I don't get that. But
It was very well thought
I
out.
thought they usually did.
I know.
Well, I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
Roll call?
Mrs. Batchelor.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes. Okay. Eddie.
Planning and Zoning Administrator Eddie McCarthy requests a motion to extend the Amelia zoning moratorium resolutions 2019-031 and amended resolution 2019-031 until July 1st, 2020.
Eddie, do you want to do a quick recap on what that motion consisted of?
Yeah.
Yep. So as a result of the dissolution, the zoning in Amelia was also dissolved. So a moratorium was put on place in order for us to have time to put together a zoning resolution to mend it into our existing Pierce regs. But due to the COVID-19 situation, the process got slightly derailed. The Planning Commission meeting with Claremont County last month was actually canceled. And this, the updated Amelia zoning regs were scheduled to go before them to get a recommendation. So they're meeting this month to get the recommendation from the Planning Commission. And we're going to try and get this, get the Amelia regulations on the May agenda, hopefully for the Zoning Commission's public hearing. So the timeline got pushed back a little bit. We were on track to beat the original moratorium, which was going to end in May, but due to advertising and collecting the Planning Commission's recommendations, we had to we're making the recommendation to extend the moratorium a little bit, buy us some more time.
So what is the impact to, I know we had a couple of carve outs that we had to do in order to, deal with some projects that were moving forward. Now those projects, they're okay, they're moving forward. What is the status of those?
Yep. So there were two primary projects. One was the Glen Mary Park development that has been approved. It's in the design plan phase with Claremont County. So it's gotten the final development plan approval through Pierce Township. And there was a site plan for an educational facility where they train new mechanics. That site plan has also been through our process and approved.
Okay, so they're all moving forward. Was there anything to do with the development on, what is that, Klein?
Klein Station.
Yeah, Klein Station.
Yeah, so we've been issuing, they're essentially zoning, they're like exemptions. We're ensuring that each proposed home complies with their Amelia approved PUD, and they're moving forward as well.
Okay.
How far along are we with tying some of this into the new Amelia zoning regulations in with a comprehensive new land use plan? Have we made any progress with that?
Yeah, so once we get all of this online, we'll have a good basis for just general zoning regulations in Amelia. It's the comprehensive plan process. The big push for the comp plan is going to come when the census begins to go through and we start to get that data rolling in. That census data, it's the once every 10 years sort of deal. So it's going to be a lot of new information for us, and it'll all include. We've spoken with a number of Census Bureau officials as well, and they are aware of the dissolution. So all of Amelia, our approximately 65%, 2/3 portion, is going to be included in our next census update, which includes all of our population, economic data, everything like that. And so all that information is going to be really, really key to kicking off the land use plan. But that is the next big item in the queue right after we get this zoning stuff through.
All right. I know you guys have been busy, but key to kicking off, I'm not sure. I mean, so we should have a pretty good intuitive sense about what's laid out around the township and, what types of things we're looking to cultivate and, encourage and, kind of how we want our zoning to go if we sit down and think about it. I mean, go ahead and correct me. What does the census have to do with that? I mean,
a lot of it is just getting us a baseline for data. A lot of it is really intuitive, as you mentioned, and the big key component is getting public input and getting everyone's or what do we want to be in 5-10 years, that sort of thing moving forward. And that's a huge part of it. The other part of it was with the data, the information, and everything, where we have those numbers where we know, what the housing profiles look like, what the population, the demographics breakdowns look like. Is our population aging? Is it getting younger? And all those different sorts of things that kind of they're all support information, but it all kind of goes into creating the full entree sort of thing.
Okay.
But couldn't we begin that process by doing the public component in advance of the census data? Then you could wash the actual, like you had just said, who do we want to be in 5 and 10 years? Then we could have that discussion with the public, get that public component, get a picture painted of what the community would like to look like, and then wash that against new census data as it's made available.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of creative ways to approach the situation, and if that's a preferred method for moving forward, that's certainly a way we can proceed.
There are just some pieces that I can see, particularly when we're talking about Amelia, where I do think we need to have that. And you guys have heard me preach this before, so it's not new, that I would like to start to have that discussion about what do we, as a collective group, think the direction of Amelia should be from here moving forward. Now, I know Nick is, I think, talking about a more broad land use plan, or at least a plan for the entire township. But I'm thinking if we could start to focus in a little bit on a microcosm of that being Amelia, that might be a good move to get us, having a good dialogue with the people that are in Amelia, the new Pierce residents.
Like a small area plan sort of scenario.
I would think, and that way we could have a really good dialogue about, who we want to be when we grow up.
I don't disagree. That'd be a decent place to start. You could start there and start trying to tie it into, kind of our overall land use plans. It is a new piece, that's recently, changed.
Well,
Bonnie,
we can get together and talk about it further, I guess.
Bonnie, what do you think?
I kind of agree with Alan on this, I think there's a lot of things that have gone on up there that probably the majority of people weren't real in favor of. So I'd like to have more input from the residents of Amelia.
Well, Eddie, maybe we could start looking into that a little bit, first off, how we're going to get that input, and what questions we're going to ask, what kind of input we want, and then how we're going to get the input, and then how we're going to, kind of log that data and use it.
That sounds good.
All right. Where were we? What are we?
We need a approval of the motion. Alan, okay.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Ms. Bachelor?
Yes, somebody's got a squeaky door.
And Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Is that at your house, Nick?
It is not. I don't.
No, it's at the police chief's house.
Oh.
If we had a video, we would have known, Chief.
You know me with technology. I did something wrong, but I am here.
Loretta, you're next.
Wake up, Loretta.
I'm here. I just had to unmute myself. It's quiet in my office, but I just want to make sure you didn't hear anything you should.
Thanks, Loretta.
So I just request a motion to renew the prepaid agreement for IT services with CSM Incorporated in the amount of $2,700. This saves us about $20 an hour if we do prepay this in blocks. It usually lasts us several months.
Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay.
Roll call.
Ms. Bachelor?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
And Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Departmental updates. Do we have anything from any of the departments here? I guess we'll just go ahead and start with the police. Chief Bachman, you got anything?
Updates. I do. I know Chief Wright's going to talk about the coronavirus, so I'll leave that up to him because he's been working on it every morning. On the celebrations, we did have a golden ticket issued to a Donnie Johnson who assisted us in clearing 9 Mile when a tree had fallen. He had some chainsaws in his truck and voluntarily got out and cleaned up the trees in the road and made it so people could drive. So very appreciative. There is a new app that we're pushing out on Facebook. It's called Neighbors, and it's by Ring app, and allows people to access data that we're going to get from the Ring doorbells and the cameras. We'll be able to see things that are going on the streets, and when a crime occurs and we have access to this video, it will be very helpful. So that's kind of a neat thing. One of the newest trends that we're seeing because of the virus is young boys and girls birthday parties. Families, they can't get together anymore because of everything that's going on. So they seem to be calling us, and we kind of term it birthday parade. So they'll call and they'll say, my 5-year-old turned 6 on Saturday. Is it possible for the police and the fire department to drive by and wave? And we've been doing that, and that seems like a new trend. It seems like every couple of days we get a call for a request, and it's kind of a neat thing. If you look on Facebook, you can see some of the kids and their faces and stuff like that. We're going to get John involved with a big pickup truck or assault truck in the very near future and make it a whole the whole enchilada of Pierce. Other than that, I find the Amelia stuff that we talked about discouraging. We got vehicles that are sitting over there in storage that I could use. We have equipment that I could use. We've hired a couple officers to assist with Amelia, and I don't want to spend a lot of money on stuff when it's sitting there. So I'm frustrated, no more than any of you by any means, but it just seems like I don't know the answer, but it seems like it's definitely not working, whatever's going on, to have cars that are going to deteriorate because they can't make a decision on how to divvy them up is silly. But anyway, that's my comments, and that's the celebrations and updates for the police department.
Thanks, Chief.
Your comments are well taken, particularly with regard to Amelia. And the great story that I heard was about the tasers. Maybe you could fill people in on the tasers. Right?
Yeah, Amelia has the police department had some newer tasers than what we were carrying. And they had quite a few of them. And I told Loretta, I said, we have the older ones. We are running out of them. They're about $1,000 a pop. I said, here we are with 8 to 10 of them sitting in our property room. And Loretta was able to reach out to Batavia, and they both agreed that we could use them. I did call the sheriff's office to ascertain if they needed some. That we had, I believe, 10 of them. So yeah, we are using some of the equipment. So thanks for everyone's input on that. And they're helping, letting us do that. So that was a big help and a big an expense that we didn't have to pay for. So thank you.
Yeah, that's a plus, but it is frustrating otherwise.
Yeah.
Could I add one quick thing here, please?
Yes, Tom.
Yeah. Jeff, the auditor's opinion is that personal property, things that are not real estate, can be divided immediately and used immediately by the two townships, as long as the division is approximately 65% us, 35% them. So you can get in those cars and start driving them, as long as it's approximately 65-35 for all personal property.
So in other words, you can only drive 65% of a car?
Preferably the bottom. Yeah, with the bottom part. No, it's, as long as the property division is approximately 65-35, they're not going to question it, which means they're not going to question it, period. So I say, but check with Loretta and make sure everything's okay as far as insurance and things like that. But they did say you don't need to switch titles. The titles have switched by operation of law. So 65% of those vehicles are Pierce's. So I think you can go get them.
Well, thank you very much. I will get with Loretta tomorrow, and I'll of course reach out to the sheriff's office who handles Batavia, and we'll work on that. So thank you.
Good.
And that's, again, it for the police.
Thank you, Chief.
You're welcome.
All right. Craig, Fire EMS, and I'll let you go ahead and do the COVID update as well.
Okay. The big first update is weather. We're in springtime. Last week on the 8th, we had a storm that rolled through. The National Weather Service did confirm 2 EF0 tornadoes that formed in Claremont County. We did have a report of a funnel cloud in the area of Cole and Jenny Lynn near Sedona Ridge. So we were very fortunate that wasn't confirmed. We had a minimal amount of damage compared to other parts of the county. So just with everything focused on the COVID-19 stuff now, I just don't want people to lose sight of we're in storm season. The county all hazard mitigation plan that we've talked about a few times, the county did receive approval on that from FEMA and Ohio EMA. EMA Director Haverkos was going to present that to the commissioners today, and then hopefully they will approve that next week. Once that's done, then they will get out a resolution for us to adopt, like we've done many times in the past. We don't have to adopt it. We fall under the county if they adopt it, but they're going to ask all municipalities to adopt it. With that out of the way, I've got some COVID-19 stuff. I know everybody's kind of tired of the COVID stuff and listening to it. I am absolutely on the front of that because that's pretty much what my life has revolved around for the better part of a month. So as of this late afternoon, there's 45 positive cases in Claremont County, 4 probable cases for a total of 49. The probable is just somebody that's new that was put in effect by the Ohio Department of Health last Friday. Those are people that are their providers believe them to have it. They just haven't been tested yet. Testing is still an issue in Ohio. And I want to say, as of our call this morning, it was 67,000, 69,000 people that have been tested in Ohio. So still out of 11.7 million, it's a relatively small number. We have 10 hospitalized in Claremont County. Unfortunately, we have had 1 death, and we have 26 individuals that have recovered. From that, we do have 7 positive cases in Pierce Township. And the fire department, we're dealing with Ohio Township also, as you're aware. We have 2 positive cases there. To put it into perspective a little bit, Ohio, as of today, has 7,628 positive cases, 163 probable, and 2,237 hospitalizations, 361 deaths as a result of this. Something interesting that I when I was pulling this together, our daily average of positive cases over a 5-day period has been 383 individuals. In the last 24-hour period in Ohio, we've had 511 positive cases and 37 reported deaths. So we've had a pretty big jump in the last 24 hours. Just so everybody's aware, there's been a lot of stuff that's gone on at the township. Obviously this meeting is a big factor of that with the stay-at-home orders and the limits on gatherings. The disaster declaration that the Board of Trustees passed, I was submitted to Claremont County EMA, which then went to Ohio EMA and ultimately FEMA. The public assistance program paperwork was all completed and submitted. This will allow us the ability to submit for allowable expenses to be reimbursed, and that's a 75% reimbursement by the federal government. Administrator Roki did create the profile and login for FEMA, so that's where we'll have to put that information into when we get there, based on all the information we've been tracking for the last several weeks. We have a lot of employees that are working remotely when possible. I know the service department's done some alternative schedules just to limit the guys being together. But one of the things that John and I talked about is if we start losing our staff of using the service department personnel to drive our ambulances and stuff to help fill a void. So there's a tremendous amount of planning that's gone on. Limiting people in vehicles, limiting people in the number of rooms. I know police department, fire department, we've moved furniture around, we've reorganized just to keep people separated. We've gone as far as to hang signs up so that the guys in the firehouse aren't all hanging out in the kitchen together and congregating. The playground's closed, and the service department removed basketball hoops and other items just to help us comply with this Ohio Department of Health and Claremont County Health orders. We've done several policy changes. So Chief Bachman and I've worked, we've limited police department response on fire and EMS details. Historically, our police respond with us on almost everything, and we've stopped that temporarily. They will respond if we need them, but we're just trying to limit that exposure. One thing that we did do that I really wanted to point out is a protocol change. So we fall under the Southwest Ohio Pre-Hospital Protocol. It's a committee of EMS personnel, physicians, medical directors under the Cincinnati Academy of Medicine. So they created a protocol. Currently, if we get called on a run, we don't have the ability to refuse to take somebody to the hospital. We can encourage them to not go if we feel that's medically unnecessary, but if they're adamant, we still have to take them. One of the big concerns with the COVID-19 and a lot of the stuff you see on the news about the medical surge planning, the alternate care centers and all that is just the spike in numbers that are unmanageable. So a protocol was created that will give us the discretion of people that don't necessarily need to go to the hospital. Maybe they haven't followed up with their doctor, will give us the ability to tell them that we're not going to take them. And our concern on the pre-hospital side for fire and EMS was that we don't want to tie up an ambulance taking somebody to the hospital that may have minor symptoms that doesn't necessarily need to go and fill up a hospital bed, and we don't have a unit available to take somebody that's having a heart attack. So that protocol was approved by our medical director. I did reach out to OTARMA with Debbie's help. Or Tarmer is our liability insurance provider. That was some guidance by the state of Ohio. So our insurance provider did approve that as well. So we are ready to go. It's not been enacted yet. We haven't had a need to do so, and I don't plan on enacting it unless we start giving a huge uptick and we have a problem managing. But I just wanted to make you guys aware of that. So we are doing a lot of monitoring of staff, daily temperature checks, symptom checks. Something of note, we do have 8 personnel in the fire department that are currently being monitored after an exposure to positive patients. So they're wearing masks, constantly checking temperatures, symptoms. They're still permitted to work, but we have a heightened awareness of them now. To that point, we've also had 4 additional personnel that were exposed and were being monitored that are no longer in that window. So I mean, it's here, it's impacting us. To my knowledge, we don't have any other township employees that have been impacted, so it's just been localized in the fire department. Tons of planning going on in the county and the region. You know, the PPE needs. I know everybody's probably tired of hearing about personal protective equipment on the news, and it's a real issue. It's a problem. There's a huge shortage for us, for the police, for the hospitals. So there's a lot of planning going into that. Some vendors looking at group purchasing, how we can drive those costs down that have been through the roof on items, and mainly how we can get the items we need. There are, just for your knowledge, there's a medical surge plan that's been done for alternate hospitals. I don't know if anybody's been by Claremont Mercy, but it's the first time I've ever seen it. There's tents set up in the parking lot. So there were tents set up at Anderson Mercy, Claremont Mercy, and Mount Orb Mercy, as well as several downtown hospitals, just in case we get that influx of patients and they need to utilize that to manage that. As I said, I'll be glad when this is over, because I spend about 99% of my day dealing with this currently. Battelle contract, there's been a lot of news about the Battelle contract. That's a company out of Columbus that can sanitize the N95 masks that are in short supply. So beginning of this week, I think Claremont County did execute that contract to allow for that service. The Fire Chiefs Alliance of Claremont County, we were a little farther ahead. We executed our contract, I think, a week ago, and we actually had a shipment that went up this past Monday to be sanitized. So we're building in some redundancy there. And then I know with the governor's press conference today, there was a change with that where the state patrol is going to help coordinate that, just to make sure that our stuff is able to make it to Columbus to be sanitized. A little interesting fact that was brought up was, I don't know that it's something great, but for the first time in the United States history, all 50 states, as well as all U.S. territories, have been under a state of emergency declaration at one time for this event. This never happened before, which is very unique. We do have a lot of thanks to give to our residents. Our residents, like they have several times in the past, their events have been wonderful. We've had residents that have dropped off N95 masks and gloves that they've gotten from their work or their house. We've had several residents that have made masks and dropped off for us to share for all the township employees. I think you guys are aware we had a super generous resident that donated $1,000 and took it upon himself to work with Donato's to secure some additional money. And we got a bunch of gift cards to give to our folks so that they could get food during this. We've also had other things dropped off. I'm almost done, I promise. The last kind of important thing, everybody in the county should have received in their mail a postcard about that size. Claremont County mailed it out to approximately 70,000 households. It's got some really good information on it for resources, questions, phone numbers. We do have some stuff on our website, and I'll make sure all of this information is on there. A lot of this information was included in the information for the packet for tonight. There's been things shared on social media. Claremont County Public Health has a tremendous amount of information on their website, as well as Claremont County, Ohio Department of Health, and CDC, their websites. I would just urge everyone to use a little caution. There's a ton of stuff floating around on social media and on other websites about coronavirus, COVID-19, things that work, things that don't. I would just caution people to make sure that they follow recommendations from credible sources and not just believe it because it's on Facebook or Twitter or somewhere else. I think that is all, unless you have any questions for me.
Questions? Okay. Service Director Kohler, what do you have? John Kohler.
Yeah, okay. We're just trying to limit our exposure to each other. So we don't really have, I mean, we're kind of running with a skeleton crew to, and try not to have too much interaction with the public. But as far as anything exciting, we don't really have anything.
Oh, all right. Loretta. Anything on the administrative end?
I do have a couple of things for you. And first, I really want to thank Eddie for all of his work and being a quick study on using Zoom meetings and everyone's cooperation. Every department practiced and tested the system, and I'm really pleased. And as chair, doing a fine job running this meeting tonight. I did want to ask the trustees if they would like to give me direction to proceed to initiate the next Prestwick TIF documents. That would be Prestwick TIF number 2. I can tell you that the collections on the first TIF were just received this first tax settlement, and Debbie can confirm that it was somewhere above $48,000 that we received this first time. We should receive that again in the fall. So the first TIF is successful. We have that earmarked for a couple projects that we know we have in progress. One is the Bradbury Road improvement. And the other is park improvements, including the Learning Center as necessary to supplement the funds that we have for that. That would be an eligible cost. So I would like to know if the trustees would like to direct me to proceed preparing the documents and working with Brenda Weimar on the next TIF for Prestwick.
Okay, do we need a formal motion for this?
I would appreciate that, just to have it on the record, and then there's a formal process that we'll have to follow once we put the documents together. There'll be public hearing and notices to be sent.
Okay. Do I have a motion to authorize Loretta Roque, Township Administrator, to proceed with the next phase in the Prestwick TIF?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mrs. Bachelor,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Thank you. I would also remind you that Karen Rabori's term on the Zoning Commission will be expiring the end of May. Our new format has been to advertise that. We don't put it in the newspaper, but we advertise it on Circle and our website internally. So I would presume that I should proceed to do that as well, unless anyone has any other comments.
I think, Loretta, personally, I think we should follow what we've been doing in the past to be consistent.
I agree.
That's what we'll do. So we'll be putting that out to let people know that that you are accepting applications for that. And I was remiss in thanking Laura also for her participation in monitoring calls in case people had problems getting in. So she has been accessible, but fortunately it seems we haven't had too many problems. And last report I had, there were about 10 people watching the live stream.
Good.
Well, that's big. I don't know, Laura might be dealing with all kinds of stuff. Maybe there's 20 people that couldn't get on and she's just pulling her hair out with phone calls right now.
No, she sent me a text and she said that it wasn't going badly at all.
Okay, good.
So I hope we don't hear afterwards, but I hope the public knows that we're really making every effort we could to be prepared and accessible.
Absolutely. All right, anything else, Loretta?
Just the next item that you can walk through. You have 3 applications for Parks Committee, and you have up to 2 slots that you can fill.
Okay. Does somebody have the applications in front of them? They can just run through who we got real quick.
I can tell you the names.
Sure.
If you like. So we have Michelle Ballside. I think people are familiar with her from her involvement with the Christmas parade in Amelia. We have Keisha Fontaine and Ann Campbell. Keisha has an environmental background, and Ann Campbell has a nursing background. I'm not familiar with either of the other two ladies, but I have met Michelle.
Have either of the other two been involved with the Parks Committee prior to putting in their application that you know of?
Michelle has. I'm not sure about the others.
Let's see, who do we got on here? Lori Wilson. Can you comment, or either of the other two involved with the Parks Committee at all?
I don't recognize either of the other two names. Michelle has been to several meetings, but the other two, I don't know.
Okay.
So I would be very comfortable with moving forward with Michelle and perhaps holding the other two over for action at a later date. So we appoint one seat rather than two.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that also.
But we should probably, you want to revisit the other two. Somebody else.
Oh my gosh, there's a dog loose in the meeting.
Corey, is that you?
I think that might be Chief Bachman's too.
Chief Bachman. All right.
He just muted, it was.
Okay. That sounds fine. So do I have a motion to appoint Michelle to the Parks Committee?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call?
Mr. Freeman,
Yes.
Mrs. Batchelor,
Yes.
and Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Thank you. And we can follow up with the other two and get some more information.
We have a hand up.
All right.
Yeah, this,
Sounds good. Do we have any other public comment? Anybody who wants to raise their hand? I see one raised hand here. Let's see. iPhone 11, whoever this might be.
oh, this is George Carpenter. So, yeah, I had two questions for Loretta around our two projects. The bid for the path project that the Claremont County engineers are managing for us has come in under budget. Does that need to get voted on by the trustees, Loretta?
No, it does not, because we have an intergovernmental agreement with the county. So that there's our local share of it that was already approved through that intergovernmental agreement. So there's actually a resolution that we had adopted in order to enter that agreement. So they will just basically tell us when it's time for us to give them our share of the funds toward that grant project.
Okay. And then the second question is around the Learning Center. Your question to the Claremont County engineers and whatever that was answered about continuing with any projects and work, and they said they were continuing. Have we any further data from the contractor for the Learning Center, and where are we on getting a firm contract with them?
At this point, the only thing we're still trying to iron out is the sewer easement itself, which is one of the things that we need to have. The bid is still good for another 30 days. And we also have been following any future developments in terms of funding from OPWC or state cap fund. And fortunately, from what we're hearing so far, our funds are not in jeopardy, but other projects that are later than ours may not get funded. So I think that we're still in good shape. We just have to get the rest of these documents pulled together before we can proceed. And Tim Robinson, who's managing it for the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, had just asked for another copy of the plans from us this week. So those were just sent between yesterday and today.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, George. All right, anybody else? Let's see, any other raised hands? I guess that's it. So our next regular.
Hey, Nick,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my question is, I guess mostly for Eddie. Eddie, I'm doing this by phone, and so in order to do the conference call by phone, obviously no one can see when I raise my hand. So the issue when it resolves about Amelia, I'll be sending you an email, if that's all right with you, and you can share it then with the trustees about any other suggestions that were discussed today as well. But, so my only concern was for those that are trying to come on through the conference call through a cell phone, they have no say in the meeting. Even when I unmute myself, I'll be muted again at times. And I understand that, but when it's an open forum.
Well, how did you just have your input just now? You just unmuted yourself and started talking, right?
Well, I did, but I tried to do that when you guys were talking about Amelia and my mute button was put back on. So that's fine. I understand that, but I'll just be sending Eddie an email and he can share it then with the rest of you guys.
You also have the chat. Well, you couldn't do the chat with the old. Is your phone a rotary phone or a touch tone dial?
It's a smartphone, but my options do not avail that. For the way I went in for the meeting was through a digital process.
All right.
Star nine was the option. We tried to put that on the list of instructions, but
okay, I had no idea.
You had to read a lot of words before you would catch that, but that was the supplemental instructions we put together. Anyone that called in by teleconference to raise their hand could put star 9 on their touch-tone phone.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that, Karen. I'm going to go ahead and real quick, I'm going to unmute everybody. So anybody who wants to have input, you're all getting muted, by the way.
She's like,
So anybody who wants to have input, go ahead. Otherwise, we're going to adjourn the meeting.
he's like, oh, well, do you have like a rotary phone or like a smart?
All right. So I will go ahead and do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn if that's what you said, Nick.
Yep. Do I have a second?
What the hell?
Look at that. Look who came to our meeting.
Ed McCoy did that. Put Todd's picture in there.
We love the picture, buddy.
Ed.
Do I have a second to adjourn?
Second.
I want to know where Ed is.
We're adjourned.
Ed's got like a green screen behind him or something.
Ed McCoy, where are you?
Something new without actually playing with it. I wasn't going to come to this meeting without some kind of come in with a bang, but you can just go to Zoom settings and put any background you want.
Look like
Pretty
you have
much.
wings.
Obviously, if I have Todd Hart, I mean, he's not on my wall or anything.
Yeah, right.
Hey, Craig, I want to thank you and Chief Bachman for all you guys are doing, man. We're behind you. I mean, that's a lot of work, but I wanted to tell you thank you. That's awesome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, dude.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you guys. And I kind of want to echo Loretta's sentiments. Thanks to all the staff, Loretta, Eddie, Laura, and everybody else who had a lot to do with this Zoom meeting. I thought it went very well, and I'm glad we got to have an interactive meeting, even though we don't have the best of circumstances right now. So, and thanks for all the public who took the time to download it and participate today. Very nice. I appreciate it.
It was fun.
Good night.
Good night.
Now, do I have a motion to adjourn? Did we get that?
Yep, we sure did. Where were you?
It was loud. I unmuted everybody. Okay. All right, guys. Take care. Thank you.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
It's a tweet.
Put Todd Hart behind it.